I've tried that before too. Hey, this is Tuesday, September 26th, advanced class. We have a bell work called Fall Break Fun. This week's story, Charlie, is already on the website. You can start reading it. No one dies in the story. Yay! I mean, at least in the story, they don't die. After the story, who knows? Book report due in 8 days. You can turn it in this week. It does get you extra points if you choose to do it. We'll need our iPad. We have our bell work. It's up there. You have 2 sentences. I tried making them not too horrible. Ooh, hang on. Jeepers, I cannot wait until fall break. And then 2, but I will miss torturing my special students. Do you guys have any questions on these that you thought were tricky before we get to do impact learning as a class? If there was one that you were like, Mr. Brovicast, this one kind of confuses me, that I can try to guide you on. I'm not going to give you answers because that's not the way I roll. My dice are all lopsided, but I can at least try to guide you. Zoe?
Well, I sang my preposition song and none of them were in there.
Then you might not know your song very well.
Yeah. I sang my
Right. Yes, D-dubs.
I have the same problem.
Okay.
We have the same preposition song.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, maybe your preposition song.
We'll find out in a moment. Well, is there one word left in the sentence that you didn't have a label for?
No.
Really?
I mean,
We'll find out in a moment. It'll be exciting. Brady?
I go.
We're all going to go. So here, I'll say the word, and we're going to say, you guys all say it together, and as long as you're all in agreement, we're good to go. If we don't have agreement, that's where the impacting comes in. So we can only hope that we all say the things together. It's going to be fun! All right. That's just making sure that we're all together. If you have the wrong answers, this is where writing down the correct answers will help you out. First one, Jeepers! What part of speech is? Wait till I get done saying the word, but okay. You are correct. That was interjection. I.
Pronoun.
See, we're all together. Can.
Verb.
Hang on. Saying it longer doesn't change it. So we're going to try it one more time. We'll see if we're all together. Can. Verb. Better. All right. Apparently we did have some issues on that one. But Mr. Brovicast, that's a noun. It is a noun, but in this case it's a verb. I cannot open that can of worms. Not. We had a disagreement. So that's where the issues come in. So not modifies a verb. If it modifies a verb, plus it's straight from last week, where you had not in last week's. What would it be?
Hey, I put that down!
Yeah, but not everyone did. So that's where we get to learn together.
I thought I got
I gave you the same word 2 weeks in a row, trying to help you out. Mr. Brovicast, it's like you were trying to be nice. And I failed at niceness, so there's no point being nice anymore. Wait!
Verb.
It can also be a noun, but in this case it's a verb.
Okay, I got it.
The wait to get in there was really long. Until. We're going to try it again, and we'll have you say what you think it is, nice and loud and proud. Until. Preposition! You guys won. Good job. So until is our preposition. And then fall.
Adjective.
Hang on.
Adjective.
We're going to try again. Fall.
Adjective.
That's better. Just checking. And then break.
Noun.
Way to shoot that one in there.
Hey,
Well
I
done.
did it all except for until, but not. I just kind of.
What? Totally makes sense, right? Then our next one. Well done on that one for the most part. We only had a few issues. Good teamwork. But I will miss torturing my special students.
Yay.
Truer words have never been said. Speaking of torturing kids. But.
Conjunction.
I tried putting it at the beginning of the sentence. I thought that might throw you off, but good job not being that dumb yet. I.
Pronoun.
I like it when you're all together. Will.
Verb.
Miss.
Verb.
Torturing.
Verb.
I realize, I think what I'm going to do for next week is I'm going to use a whole bunch of words that can be more than one thing, like can and wait and miss. I'll feel like the young miss had to wait before she can open the. And so I'm going to try and figure out how to use can both ways and wait both ways and miss both ways, put them all in there and just watch your brains melt.
that is evil.
It is a challenge to make you a better person.
It is evil.
My.
Adjective.
Special.
Adjective.
Students.
Noun.
Good job.
I got it all.
It's more of a challenge for me to figure out how to work all those words in there. It's going to be a fun challenge for me and then a fun challenge for you. And we get to challenge each other.
I don't know what the definition
Then,
is.
if you have the homework done and you did not mess up the bell work, then you can put the notebook away. If you did not have the homework done, you might want to keep your notebook out and work on that as we continue to educate you. Then, your story for today is The Landlady. So I'm going to have you take a look at the one that says The Landlady. You don't need anything at all unless you plan on jabbing your iPad, if that sounds like a you issue. Make sure you download it because we're not going to have this screen up there tomorrow. We're just going to jump straight into it. While you're there, you could scroll down a little bit and download the Charles story too. Charlie is Charles, not Charlie.
Charles.
That's embarrassing. Two completely different people. And then you can download the Charles story if you want. You can try and download the homework, but you're just going to frustrate yourself because the button doesn't go anywhere. I learned my lesson last week when I went ahead and made a link to an old homework that obviously didn't make sense. I had kids still try and do that homework. And I'm like, I'm about stuff you've read before. I thought it was really tough. And I was like, are you kidding me? So I just took away the button altogether. On the little sheet thing we had before, I guess I could have said, on here, there's two things we've not filled out. One was irony, which we did yesterday, and the last one is foreshadowing, which we're going to do here today. I'm hoping you know what foreshadowing is. If not, then you might want to write it on this little thing, but that's up to you because our story today, do you remember that story we read called Lady and the Tiger?
Yeah.
And that story we read called Locker Junkie? And that story we read called Landlady?
No.
And how there was something in common with the ending of all three of them?
No.
Now,
Is it you eating?
now here's where the trick comes in. With Landlady, there is a definite ending. But the trick is it ends halfway through a conversation. Literally, the story just ends right in the middle of them talking. You're going to go, Mr. Brovicast, what? And you're going to get all ragey and start flipping desks. But this one has a definite ending. The trick is you have to go back in the story and use foreshadowing. And when we use foreshadowing tomorrow, that's when we're going to have that Ermagerd kind of moment. You're going to go, wait, that's what happened? And I go, uh-huh. And you go, huh? And I go, uh-huh. And we get to bond and cry and stuff like that. But first, you have to know what foreshadowing is. What is foreshadowing? Kira.
Things in the middle or beginning of the story that show what's going to happen in the story.
There you go. Clues in the story to help figure out the end. This one is chock full of foreshadowing. If this story were a chocolate chip cookie, you would need 3 glasses of milk because there's so much foreshadowing. The trick is, while you're eating it, you can't taste the chocolate chips at all. You're going to go through going, Mr. Brovicast, there's no clues in here whatsoever. And then we're going to get to the end, and I'm going to give you one clue, and all of a sudden, boom, clues just pop up everywhere. You're like, it's crazy, except for one small thing you'll figure out when we get into it. But that's going to come up here in just a moment. So that's foreshadowing. So that gives you an idea, as we get into our story, it is chock full of little clues that are going to help guide you. Riley? Just the definition from yesterday, but it's already in your notebook, so I wasn't going to make you write it twice. That on there is just my reminder to make sure I do irony so I don't forget, which I've done, so we're now good. Alright, so we're going to get to that. Now that you have foreshadowing, our story, The Landlady, is going to start off getting into a couple of different characters. It's going to talk about a guy wearing a brown trilby hat. I had no idea what a brown trilby hat was, so I Googled it, and that's what a brown trilby hat is. I know you're like, Mr. Brovicast, I wear those all the time because I'm a fancy lad. I feel the same way. The Landlady. Oh, by the way, this, the author, Roald Dahl, is a name some of you should recognize.
Yeah, I don't like that guy.
Yeah. He's written a number of ones. The thing is, his short stories were for adults. His novels were for kids. But they all come from the same brain. It's going to be fun, Landlady. Did you just give me a huffy sigh? Billy Weaver had traveled down from London on the slow after... Oh, wait. what becomes of our story mountain? What's at the very beginning of the story mountain? Exposition. So we're going to get that little introductory parts as we get to it before we get to the rising action. You'll know rising action when we get to it in the story. On the slow afternoon train, with a change at reading on the way. And by the time he got to Bath, it was about 9 o'clock in the evening, and the moon was coming up out of a clear, starry sky over the houses opposite the station entrance. But the air was deadly cold, and the wind was like a flat blade of ice on his cheeks. "Excuse me," he said, "but is there a fairly cheap hotel not too far away from here?" "Ah, try the Bell and Dragon," the porter answered, pointing down the road. "They might take you in. It's about a quarter of a mile along the other side." Real quick, so we have our main character. The main character is
Billy.
Here and in, what country is Billy?
England.
How do we know he's in England?
Because it said London.
Because it said London, and London's in England.
What-
Those of you who yelled out London for the country, shame on you. And then he just got off of something, and what did he just get off of? There you go. You guys know what a porter is when it says the porter gave him directions?
Train dude.
Works for me. Train dude, the guy who carries like your luggage. In Harry Potter, like they help push little carts. That's probably your best reference to trains that you guys have. So same thing. All right, try the Bell and Dragon. Billy thanked him, picked up his suitcase, and set out to walk the quarter mile to the Bell and Dragon. By the way, apparently in London, their names of hotels are super much cooler than ours because we have a Hilton, they have Bell and Dragon. So they own us. He had never been to Bath before. He didn't know anyone who lived there. But Mr. Greenslade at the head office in London had told him it was a splendid city. "Find your own lodgings," he said, "and then go along and report to the branch manager as soon as you've got yourself settled." Billy was 17 years old. He was wearing a new navy blue overcoat, a new brown trilby hat, a new brown suit, and he was feeling fine. He walked briskly down the street. He was trying to do everything briskly these days. Briskness, he had decided, was the one common characteristic of all successful businessmen. The big shots up at head office were absolutely fantastically brisk all the time. They were amazing. There were no shops in this wide street that he was walking along, only a line of tall houses on each side, all of them identical. They had porches and pillars and 4 or 5 steps going up to their front doors, and it was obvious that once upon a time they'd been very swanky residences. But now, even in the darkness, he could see that the paint was peeling from the woodwork on their doors and windows, and the handsome white facades were cracked and blotchy from neglect. Do you guys know what swanky residences means?
No.
A swanky residence.
Swanky means fancy, so really upscale and super nice and stuff like that. And so that's what swanky is, just a weird word to mean it. But is the neighborhood still swanky?
No.
And that's the problem. You could tell it was the neighborhood at one time was all super swank, but now it's sort of a bit run down and having some issues. You know, Lee?
Once I visited England and I got to stay at a hotel called the Red Radish.
See, they have the best name, so much better than open. Suddenly, in a downstairs window that was brilliantly illuminated by a street lamp not 6 yards away, Billy caught sight of a printed notice propped up against the glass on one of the upper panes. It said, "Bed and Breakfast." There was a vase of flowers, tall and beautiful, standing just underneath the notice. He stopped walking. He moved a bit closer. Green curtains, some sort of velvety material, were hanging down on either side of the window. The flowers looked wonderful beside them. He went right up and peered through the glass into the room. And the first thing he saw was a bright fire burning in the hearth. On the carpet in front of the fire, a pretty little dachshund was curled up asleep, with its nose tucked into its belly. The room itself, so far as he could see in the half-darkness, was filled with pleasant furniture. There was a baby grand piano and a big sofa, several plump armchairs, and in one corner he spotted a large parrot in a cage. Animals were usually a good sign in a place like this, Billy told himself, and all in all, it looked to him as though it would be a pretty decent house to stay in. Certainly, it'd be more comfortable than the Bell and Dragon. Do you guys know what a bed and breakfast is? And he just now found a bed and breakfast. And what the difference is between a bed and breakfast and just a hotel. Brush?
A bed and breakfast
Uh-huh.
It is basically where you go and stay the night and then have breakfast there and then leave.
And how's that different than a hotel?
A hotel you can spend multiple nights
You can do multiple nights at a bed and breakfast too.
and it costs.
It does cost. Good job, nailed it. They do charge monies. You're on the right track. Zoe?
A bed and breakfast is like, they have like a breakfast place
Uh-huh.
and the bottom, and anyone can come. You don't have to like go to the hotel to go, and then like the rooms are upstairs.
Closer, but not quite. It's still like a hotel. You can still go into a random hotel and eat their food too. But you're on the right track. Vic?
Isn't it like where you stay in someone's house?
There's the big difference.
Yeah.
Bed and breakfast is where you rent out your own house. And so it's where you have like a really big house and you have extra rooms, and so you set it up where you get to come stay with me in the Brovie bed and breakfast, and so you get to come just sort of stay in my house, and then I make breakfast for you in the morning, and we sit around like the dinner table together and stuff like that. That's the difference in a bed and breakfast, as opposed to an actual hotel. And so we actually have a bed and breakfast here in Fishers. If you've gone down to Conner Prairie, right across from Conner Prairie, there's like this big fancy like bluish purplish house that's across from there, and it says like something bed and breakfast. It's like a big old farmhouse. That's a bed and breakfast here. And so they have a place there, whereas this family, they bought this huge house, and you can stay there and stuff like that. That's the difference. And here, he says that's where he's thinking about staying. Typically, it's more expensive because you get much nicer stuff. You get to stay in like someone's actual room, and you get to actually have them cook you food as opposed to like pub food or something like that. So you pay more for it, but it's much more personable, where you get to actually hang out with somebody and things like that. He says there's a dachshund there. Do you guys know what a dachshund is?
It's a dog.
What kind of dog?
It's a wiener.
There you go. So it's the little wiener dog looking thing like that. And what other animal is there? And he says the lines, animals are usually a good sign in a place like this. What does he mean by that?
Good animals.
Suskevich?
Usually, like, since animals are cuddly and cute, that might mean that the family and owners are like...
I could roll with that. We like the cuddly and cute. Hollyhock?
Like, if the animals are okay, then he should be okay.
Yeah, the idea that, you don't want to stay in a place with, like, dead dogs laying out front, because that's probably not a good sign they're going to keep you alive. Like, oh, I couldn't keep that dog alive. He kept wanting food. And so, like, that's probably not a good sign. But here, like, oh, the dog looks so happy, then there's probably a good chance that he'll be nice and happy. So that's his thinking.
His thinking, that counts.
On the other hand, a pub would be more congenial than a boarding house. Big word that means friendly. There would be beer and darts in the evenings. Wait, how old is Billy?
17.
But also what country is he in?
England.
So he's welcome to drink all the beer he wants. Beer and darts in the evenings and lots of people to talk to. And it'd probably be a good bit cheaper, too. He'd stayed a couple of nights in a pub once before, and he liked it. He'd never stayed in any boarding houses, and to be perfectly honest, he was a tiny bit frightened of them. The name itself conjured up images of watery cabbage and greedy landladies and a powerful smell of fish in the living room. After dithering about like this in the cold for 2 or 3 minutes, Billy decided that he'd walk on and take a look at the Bell Dragon before making up his mind. He turned to go. And now a queer thing happened to him. He was in the act of stepping back and turning away from the window when all at once his eye was caught and held in the most peculiar manner by the small notice that was there. Bed and breakfast, it said. Bed and breakfast. Bed and breakfast. Each word was like a large black eye staring at him through the glass, holding him, compelling him, forcing him to stay where he was and not walk away from that house. And the next thing he knew, he was actually moving across from the window to the front door of the house, climbing the steps that led up to it, and reaching for the bell. He pressed the bell. Far away in a back room, he heard it ringing, and then at once, it must have been at once, because he hadn't even had time to take his finger from the bell button, the door swung open, and a woman was standing there. Normally you ring the bell and you have at least a half-minute's wait before the door opens. But this dame was like a jack-in-the-box. He pressed the bell and poof, out she popped. Kind of made him jump. She was about 45 or 50 years old, and the moment she saw him, she gave him a warm, welcoming smile. So, to pause real quick, he was deciding between the Bell and Dragon, which is a pub What they had there was like where it was a bar on the bottom floor, and then you could pay to stay in the rooms on the top floor. Or he goes to bed and breakfast. What's the drawback to staying in the bed and breakfast?
You don't get all the fun stuff.
You don't get all the fun stuff, and you pay more for it. So he's like, plus, you're staying with someone, so you don't know. I mean, there might be kind of a creepy person there. And so you're staying with a family, or maybe they smoke, or maybe they eat like really nasty fish that makes the house smell bad. And it's like you have no idea, so you're sort of running that risk. But at the same time, when you're 17 and away from home, he's like, I could kind of feel nice staying at a place like that. So he has to make that decision. Which one does he end up doing?
Bed and breakfast.
Why?
Creepy.
He gets pulled in by the sign. He can't really explain it. Then he goes up to ring the bell, and when he rings the bell, what happens? So the idea that you ring the doorbell, and normally you have the whole ding dong, you sit there and wait and like tap 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 on the door. But from this one, it goes ding. Hey, how you doing? Dong. He's like, ah! And he steps back, so she was right there staring at him. Brovicast, that's weird. But realize, how long was he standing outside of her house making that decision? Yeah, he was out there for a while. So every chance you're walking by, like, oh, someone's out front. Is he coming up? No, he's just standing there. And standing, you're like, okay. And then they go up and ring the doorbell, so maybe she's just sitting there waiting for him.
Maybe she's crazy.
Wait, and how old is she?
45 to 50.
Just so you know, I've been doing this story since like when I first started teaching. And I always described her as this old lady. Now, 45 to 50 years old is like 5 years older than me. So she's no longer an old lady. She's just a lady. So that's how we're going to refer to her as just a lady. Please come in, she said pleasantly. She stepped aside, holding the door wide open, and Billy found himself automatically starting forward into the house. The compulsion, or more accurately, the desire to follow after her into that house was extraordinarily strong. I saw the notice in the window, he said, holding himself back. Yes, I know. I was wondering about a room. It's all ready for you, my dear, she said. She had a round pink face and very gentle blue eyes. But, I was on my way to the Bell and Dragon, Billy told her, but the notice in your window just happened to catch my eye. My dear boy, why don't you come in out of the cold? How much do you charge? Oh, 5 and 6 pence a night, including breakfast. Well, that, by the way, that's European, Britishy money, so I have no idea how much that would be today. It's like, I don't know, 2 pickles and a wall of lint or something. Oh.
And a bell.
See? Nothing bad or creepy or horrible happened at all. Just some guy going and staying. And that's it. Your homework